Hey, everybody. Welcome to Ponomarev and versus Putin. And it looks like we've got a lot of new folks here today. And I haven't seen Ilya come in yet. Thank you, Catherine. I was about to say, if you're new, I want to give you a little background on Ilya. As Catherine has just said, I saw Ilya on the news last night. I don't know how you could avoid seeing Ilya on the news. Bo is here. That's great. It's great to see you here, Bo. Thanks for joining us. Ilya has been everywhere. We're going to talk about it. Obviously, this is in relationship to the assassination of Daria Dugina, and then I'm calling it the NRA Manifesto, but it's the National Republican Army, not to be confused with the National Rifle Association of the U.S. If you don't know, Ilya was the one, and I don't know how this happened. I'm hoping he'll tell us today. He was the one who received the manifesto from the National Republican Army and reported it on his YouTube channel. If you're a regular to the show, you know that Ilya created, in response to the Russian invasion, a YouTube channel in Russian for Russians. Did I say that right? Yes, in Russian for Russians, called February Morning, obviously named after the date of the invasion. And he received the manifesto from the National Republican Army and actually, revealed it to the world on February morning. That was, I think, on Saturday morning now. And if you Google Ilya Ponomarev, put it in Google News or wherever you go get your news, you will get a ton of additional information about this. And I don't want to say too much about it because obviously he's a better source of information than I am, certainly. But I do want to give him an introduction because I think we have a lot of new people here. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Ilya, as people who are regulars know, was a member of the Russian State Duma. He, in 2014, was the only member of the Duma, really of the parliament, to vote against the annexation of Crimea. As you can see over my shoulder, I should go this way, right? He has a book coming out, which I have been helping him with, called Does Putin Have to Die? The Story of How Russia Becomes a Democracy After Losing to Ukraine. Part of what happened to Ilya after that vote against the annexation of Crimea, he was the only vote. Can you imagine? You're the only one to vote on something of that significance. A few months later, as is discussed in depth in the book, he was in Silicon Valley doing some official business for the State Duma, and he got about 100 calls overnight, checked his phone in the morning, and discovered that he was not going home. He was now in exile. They had closed the border to him. Excuse me. His story is quite remarkable, and what you'll learn when you read the book, and we're just literally wrapping up the final details today, is that he has really spent his life working on making Russia a democracy and enabling Russians to enjoy the kind of life that we all enjoy, that we all, frankly, take for granted. So he's got a lot to say. He is not new to this battle against Putin and Putinism, and has really, he's the man. So I'm waiting for him to log in. Ilya, if you're here, wave your hand in the chat box. Sometimes I don't always recognize your name. I know a lot of you are new here. Excuse me. I don't know why I'm, excuse me. I see a lot of people who are new here. Thank you for joining us here. I'm going to continue to give some details about Ilya while we're waiting for him to join. Sometimes he's a little delayed. He actually does an interview on his news channel, February Morning. You know what? Thank you. I'm going to put on my cool scarf. This is compliments of a local artist named Denise Lawless. And she, in a sense, donated these scarves for something I had intended to do yesterday that I also want to talk about. We'll get to that later in the show. Let me keep using this time before there's Ilya. Let me invite you in, Ilya. Thanks for being here. Hold on a sec. Here we go. Okay, Ilya, you should be getting the usual pop-up there, and we should see you here in a second. Ilya, I've been giving people a little background on you and what's been happening in the last couple of days. Obviously, on top of all of this, there he is. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for being
We're getting the cartoon voice again. We're getting the cartoon voice. You want to try to log in again where you sound like a cartoon character? All right. While he works that out, I'm going to keep talking. Obviously, yesterday was I'm going to kick you out. There we go. Let me see if I can re-add you, Ilya. Hold on. What's going on here? Okay, we're going to try to fix this. It's always, frankly, the scariest part of the show. While we try to overcome any problems we're having. Let's see if I can fix this. Thank you, Stutz Hall, for paying for the show. Bo, thank you. While we're talking here, I'm going to keep trying to get Ilya back in. Ilya, if you can hear me, you might have to log back into BeamZ. I'm not sure what's going on. Let me also explain, since people are paying for the show now, which is great. There's a button in the right upper hand corner of your screen. I'm going to keep talking and trying to get Ilya in here at the same time. So forgive me if I look like I'm multitasking. I am. I'm in trouble here. Bear with me here. I'm going to try to keep my cool. There he is. Let's try again. Let's see if he joins. Let's just give Ilya a moment. There's a button in the upper right-hand corner. It either has a $sign or it says pay host. And trying again, Ilya. Ilya and I are the hosts of the show. Even though it may say pay host or it has a $sign, we are not being paid. We're volunteers. We're doing this. Ilya spends 24 hours a day working on supporting Ukraine and frankly, taking down the Putin government. I'm a volunteer as well, doing what I can. The show is part of what I do. So when you hit that button, you get a screen that looks like this. And we'll explain probably later where your money goes, but it goes to a foundation that Ilya has created called the Bravery Foundation. And any amount you can give, all money we receive goes to the Ilya Foundation. There he is. Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm again very much sorry. Some problem with the connection. Yeah.
So you've had an interesting couple of days.
Yeah, they were not boring at all.
So I know. Earlier on, people were talking about having seen you on the news. You've told the story a few times. You know how to tell it. I don't even know how to ask the right questions. Why don't you tell us what's going on and what's relevant, and frankly, whatever up-to-date news you can offer?
Probably what you are referring to is what happened last Saturday.
Yeah.
And there was an attack on father and daughter Dugin in Moscow by a partisan group called National Republican Army. And this is the partisan group that I was working with for quite a while, since April, actually, already.
I'm going to jump in and ask a question, because
Sure.
you in the past have talked to us about other events, bipartisans, like there was the drone that blew up the power plant and things. Were those other events that you've talked to us about, were they also part of the NRA?
Most, not all of them, because in general in Russia right now there are 3 different partisan networks, and I'm communicating to 3 of them, but probably the most intense communication is with this NRA people. But before that, they were not branding themselves. They were always saying like, okay, we just like group of activists, and they now decided to brand them. And before they were actually telling me that they are planning something large, and when this something large would happen, then they would come up with the announcement of who they are and with their ideological platform and whatever. And that's exactly what they asked me to do. So they reached out to me and they sent me their manifesto and are saying, can you please publish this and explain, who was behind the attack and what we want and why we did this. And why we picked up Dugins and all this kind of stuff. And for everybody to understand that Dugin was the father of Russian fascism. He was a top ideologist. He was the guy who actually invented the war with Ukraine. He created the concept of Novorossia. He was the, I believe, first actually a non-military person who went under US and British sanctions because of this. And his daughter, she was his arms. She was all the time in Donbass. And she was directly calling on national TV to kill more Ukrainians. That were his exact quote from her. Kill more, kill more, kill more. That's what she said. And recently, she was behind the suggestions to organize a terrorist attack against prisoners of war from Ukraine who are now being held in so-called Donetsk People Republics. And such terrorist attack was carried out in the beginning of August when some 50 POWs of Ukraine from Azov were killed in a blast in Yelenovka, in the detention center in Yelenovka. And so these fighters of National Republican Army, obviously they wanted a retaliation. That's why their object of attack was both Daria and Alexander.
Yeah. So you received this manifesto, and I'm guessing maybe you were even expecting something like this, but the first thing you did was go on February morning and read the manifesto, begin discussing it, and then it really spread, I'm assuming, through the Russian and Ukrainian world, but also through the Western world very quickly.
Well, that's correct. I frankly speaking, in the first moment, I was a bit shocked. I was shocked with their choice of the object of the attack. I was not aware. I was aware that they are planning to do something, and they had certain expectations of what it would be.
Yeah.
But I had no clue whom they actually picked. That's, swear I didn't know this. And frankly speaking, I had two mixed emotions. Personally, I fully understand the motives. And the guy really, he's natural fascist, open fascist. And he really was the ideologist. At the same time, I know the guy personally very well from my past. We spent a lot of time together. We never been friends, but we were good acquaintances. And I know this Daria when she was a little girl. It was all quite long time ago. But also I was thinking, like cynically and rationally, how it would be taken and recognized in the West, in Ukraine, among Russians. And so I was doing my best, not just to read the manifesto, which I had in the very first moment, but how to explain what have happened. And that's why we put together in video different facts about Dugin, about his daughter. And I read the manifesto, and then we had the show on February's morning, where during an hour we were talking to different people, and kind of like discussing what actually happened. And the result is very paradoxical, I would say, because in the West so far, the reaction was kind of neutral to positive. I haven't seen a single really negative reaction on this. Maybe I'm mistaken, better, but I haven't read something which was like, oh, poor Daria. At the same time, among Russians, among Russian opposition, not just ordinary Russians, among Russian opposition, it's, oh no, that should have not have happened. We are against violence. Yes, we are against Putin, but we're against violence, etc., etc., etc. And then in the private messages, they were telling me, by what you, Ilya, has done, now we all will be killed. We all will be killed by Putin. Putin would come to us with Novichok. He would poison us, or he would send us killers and we will beat them to death, and he would organize a campaign of terror against us. And it's all your fault. Obviously,
because after all, it really, when I'm an opposition leader, it really ultimately, by the way, I have the advantage of having read your book many times, including, over the last 24 hours. I've learned more about the thinking of opposition, traditional or typical opposition leaders in Russia than I ever thought I would understand. But it really is very much aligned with what I read in the book, which is there's an awful lot of posturing in public, but at the end of the day, my safety is what matters versus what's really best for my country.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why actually they contacted me. They obviously have in their mind, probably a model similar to IRA and Sinn Féin. I saw a Catholic a guy who is saying this, so I think it's very much what they think how it should be. And at the end of the day, they were giving all the assurances that they would never follow the example of somebody who is targeting the civilians. And that they would never do something like this, that they want to fight people who are responsible for the war, who financing the war, who facilitating the war, who provide ideological ground for the war, for the warmongers. And I think it's, we are at war. I would be very much against this before February 24. But when Putin started his aggression, we are at war. He's sending his missiles on us every day. Every day people die. Just yesterday, another 22 men and women died in the attack to a civilian train. Obviously, it's not a military object at all. It was just a civilian passenger train, which they hit with several missiles. It was a deliberate attack dedicated to Ukraine's Independence Day. Yesterday here in Kyiv, we had 7 air attacks warnings. So they do this terror. Putin was the guy who started terror in the very first day when he was coming to power. He blew up residential apartment buildings in Moscow to pave his way to power. So he's the terrorist, and this is the resistance. And I think that this resistance needs to be supported.
So I want to ask you, I'm sure everybody here is aware, obviously, that yesterday was Independence Day of Ukraine, also coincided with the 6-month anniversary of the invasion by Russia. And we'll get to the comments and questions in the chat as well. So it was a very symbolic day yesterday. My sense was that there was a lot of fear amongst Ukrainians of hell is going to rain on us. I'm wondering if you share those fears or expectations, and are you surprised by what actually did unfold yesterday?
No, I have way larger fears in this regard for this weekend, because that's the usual way how Russian army was doing it in the past. Obviously, they were not striking it when everybody is expecting this, vice versa.
Whoops. Okay. We'll see if Ilya comes back. There he is.
Down, that they don't expect nothing, and
we're losing you. Yep. Okay. Let's look at a couple of the comments and see if Ilya makes it back. Agnieszka says, Pope Franciscus mentioned her by name as innocent victim. Being a Catholic, I'm very sorry to have witnessed to this statement. Jody says, her death is just another example of the loose. I'm not quite sure what you mean there. Let me try to add Ilya back in. Sorry for that interruption. Well, let's see if he can get back in. One of the things I want to mention and I want to ask Ilya about, I'm not sure if he can hear me as he's logging back in or not, There was just a news reported by Bloomberg, and I assume other news organizations, that Vladimir Putin has ordered the army. Okay, I'm going to let you continue.
Yeah, I'm sorry, get kicked out for some reasons. But this attack on the passenger train was outrageous. Obviously, nobody as expected. It's obviously no military sense at all. Just that's an outrageous act of terror. Direct act of terror without any ifs it's not an exaggeration. It is an act. It is an act of terror. So we'll see what would happen. But still, we are reinforced in this idea that we are at war and we should take it as such. And we shouldn't hesitate. The war can be won only with weapons. It cannot happen, with the bare hands and with a nice word. Putin is the type of person who understands only brute force. And the Russian elite needs to understand that they can't just sit aside and wait for things to happen. And that's why Vladimir Zelensky actually called for the world to make Russians go back to Russia and take the fight. So it's a conscious strategy of Ukraine to make Russians fight. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah, and just to make sure everyone's clear on what you're referring there, and you talk about this a lot in the book. A lot of Russians have left the country, and it doesn't help remove Putin or bring about a governmental change of democracy if everyone who was already unhappy with the government has already left. They need to go back and fight with the people who are left. And I think that feeds into the whole discussion about the visa ban as well.
No, absolutely, 100%. That's, as you said, it's a strategy. That's all from the Ukrainian government, for all of Ukrainians actually. It was all Ukrainians are, very much supporting what the guys Ponomarev were doing there in Russia. They so inspired. They say, oh, at last the Russians, they start actually fight. They are not just sitting and talking, making Ukrainians die in a field of war and liberate their own country for them. But at least, they are doing something. And that restores their faith in Russians as people who actually can do so. And that's what Zelensky was calling for. Because for many months, he was just like asking, guys, please consider, you should be against your government. You should stop participating in this war. You should do something, but nothing has happened. So it needs to be a push.
Yes, the pressure has to increase.
Hmm?
I want to talk about something you brought up last week, and that was you really brought to my attention, and I suspect a lot of other people, about the Independence Day of Ukraine being the 6-month anniversary of the invasion, and you and excuse me, many others encouraged people to go protest in front of a Russian embassy or consulate or. So I realized after you shared that with us, I'm many hours from Washington, D.C. And I thought, what could I do without traveling many hours to be part of a protest? And I realized there's a place on the internet, a website that's been created by a professor at Yale that lists companies. I'm sure you know Sonnenfeld. He lists companies that are continue to do business in Russia. And it's led to a lot of very successful boycotts. A lot of companies have left Russia, McDonald's, Starbucks, and lots of smaller companies because of Sonnenfeld's work. And I realized I could go on his website and I could find a local company that was still doing business in Russia, and I could go protest there. I didn't think about it at the time, but I actually want to share the address of that website because I want to encourage everybody who's watching. You don't have to do this just on the 6-month anniversary of the war. You can do it tomorrow. I'm having a hard time copying this. Hold on. But if you go to this list,
website, I agree. Yes. And you know what, Gregg, you probably don't know, but you remember when you was at my place, I was gathering people for a barbecue the next day after you left.
Yeah.
And one of people came to that barbecue, actually died in Washington, D.C. Last week. His name is Dan Rappaport. He is a very well-known Russian investor. And right now there are debates where it was a suicide, where it was a murder. And he was a very good friend of mine. And his widow, Alena, she is 100% convinced that it was not a suicide. The DC police thinks that it was a suicide. But nevertheless, what the guy was doing is actually exactly what you are calling people to do right now, is to force the remaining international companies to stop doing business with Putin's regime. And that's, I think, is very, very, very important, because that's where his money is coming from. From those businesses, from the taxes that are being paid by those businesses. And in general, it's a great psychological pressure. And some people believe that why Dan has died is because he actually made several victories on that way, and that somebody didn't like him.
Yeah. So, really to just continue that thought, if you click that link I've now put in the chat, you can find a company near you. It could be a local, outlet, or it could be the corporate headquarters. You can physically go there and protest, take people with you. You can use social media to put pressure on them. I was really surprised that the company, I think people here in the US in particular will identify with, there's a company near me called Align Technologies. They make a product you hear about on the radio all the time. They're invisible braces for your teeth. They're called Invisalign. And frankly, I was planning a protest for yesterday. I had to cancel the protest because our publisher said, you got to do this overnight. So I had to choose between, working on a draft of the book or going, but I still read it. I'm going to post it again, and let's see if you see it. The point here is there's many things you can do to help. And if you're really committed, this is one of the things to consider. This is easy. Your friends and family will get excited about it with you, and you can physically go there or use social media. But these kinds of campaigns have already been very effective. And the fact it's how BeamZ got to where we are today in supporting Ukraine was initially it started by boycotting companies. And Rena, I hope you see that link. So the last thing I want to ask you about, I started to ask when we launched your coverage there. Bloomberg has just reported, and I'm sure other outlets as well, that Putin has just ordered the army to recruit another 137,000 soldiers. Are you surprised by that?
Not at all, but the truth is that I cannot.
Did you say good luck?
Yes. Just you see, we should understand how the Russian army actually works. By law, they cannot send draftees into the military campaign. They can send only professionals. Those who sign professional contracts with Russian military. And even draftees, they are not allowed to sign a professional contract with the Russian army for at least 4 months since they were drafted.
Is that for training?
Yeah.
Training?
They have to pass the training, orientation. They should understand where they are and kind of make a conscious decision about that. In general, at the beginning of war, it was a big scandal because it appeared that they actually sent draftees to fight just cause purpose. And so there was a scandal, and they had to withdraw them because it was a direct violation of the law. And right now, the situation with the professionals is very good for Russia, for Russian army, because the number of people who sign a contract is smaller than number of people who actually break the contract and resign and leaving the military, refusing to fight against Ukraine. And the plan for them was to sign 50,000 contracts during last 3 months. And everything that they could sign was 15,000. And at the same time, during the same period of time, number of personnel who was killed in action or wounded was larger than this 15,000. Plus, it was another 5,000 who just quit. So right now they're rather losing people than getting people. And what they're trying to do is in Moscow, for example, they're trying to recruit gastarbeiters into the army. And the gastarbeiters in Moscow, it's like in certain American states, like illegal immigrants, which speak no English, and in our case, they speak no Russian at all. They've been used on the dirtiest jobs, like janitors, like street cleaners, sometimes on the construction sites, somewhere where like you don't need to speak a lot of language. And they've been offered that they would give them Russian citizenship if they would decide to get to Russian army and fight in Ukraine. But as you understand, how those people can fight at all? They have no military experience at all, and they cannot even understand the commands that they are getting from their commanders. So it's just, cannon meat.
Do you think an organization like the NRA, even as a bit of a publicity stunt, might take this press release from Putin about conscripting more soldiers and just wipe out the name Russia and put NRA? We're recruiting 137,000 soldiers. Come join up and fight for what's right.
I will pass them your advice. Actually, I do think that they need to think well about their publicity. There are a lot of security concerns, as you may get.
Yeah.
They cannot just recruit people because you would never know who would come to you.
Yeah.
And how many security officers would be inside such volunteers. And I don't think that they have a lot of ways how to check people. And we know that I think I didn't have a chance to tell you about this, but it was a week ago, 10 days ago. There were it was their people. Two of their people were killed by FSB in Volgograd, next to Volga River, when they were planning one attack. They're in Volgograd, so it's serious. It's not like, there would be some even like detention. No, it's a real fight. It's a real war.
Yes. I have two more questions before I let you go. One is, you said, as far as conscripting recruits, I don't know if conscripting is the right word, but recruiting soldiers, there's this law and there's a 4-month period. Does that law sometimes in Russia, I get the impression, is very malleable. Could that law just suddenly be overturned or disappear, and suddenly there's a lot of new recruits and that 4-month period goes away?
Oh, yeah. If there would be a political will on behalf of Kremlin, yes, obviously they can change the law. And as we know, they can change the law like in a couple of days.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. The thing is that it would be a big scandal inside the country. And right now, what Putin is trying to promote is that, okay, guys, professionals were fighting, it was their voluntary choice to get to the field of war. They're getting money for it. And you should support ours, but it's not your war. Yeah, it's not a war at all. It's special operation. It's special.
And we're winning anyway.
Yeah, which is not
We're winning anyway, right?
Yeah.
Okay, one last question before I let you go. Again, about these 137,000 recruits. It almost strikes me, given what you've explained to us about the 4-month period and everything, it almost strikes me as like a PR move to the West. We're here for the long haul, and in 4 months, we're going to have completely restocked our ammo of soldiers. Do you think that's an element of this? Because 4 months is a long time in a 6-month war.
No, again, if we're talking about recruits, then there would be other people who are resigning from the army because their term would be over.
I see.
So it's a
It's a
reflection, of
replacement.
course. Yeah. So, yeah, the message is message and the PR is PR, and here you're like 100% right. But it would not affect the bottom line at the end of the day.
I see. I see.
They just have more people for it. It's just, you know, the democratic situation in the country is also.
Before I let you go, is there anything else you want to add?
Probably it was already quite a lot. Yes.
It was. All right. Well, thank you for being here, Ilya. Thank you for everything you're doing. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the Bravery Foundation. Feel free to stick around, or if you need to jump out, that's okay too.
Actually,
Right.
you can let me go away with the.
Yes. Let me see if I do that or you do that.
Guys, thank you very much for no, and I really, really, really appreciate it. It's very needed for us. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, Ilya. I'm going to see if I can kick you out. Hold on. Oh, there he goes. I learned something today. So, and I'm sorry we didn't get to your comments. I know that we're, he's very time constrained. I want to talk about the Bravery Foundation, particularly for folks who are new. Every dollar we collect when you hit this button up here, every dollar we collect goes to the Bravery Foundation, which was created by Ilya and a team of others. And what the Bravery Foundation does is it identifies people in Russia who have jobs in the military or the government or are part of the propaganda machine. And they're people who have these jobs. So by virtue of the work they do, they're forced to support the war, but they don't support the war. So inside they don't support the war, but when they go to work, they must. So the Bravery Foundation extracts these people or enables them to quit their jobs, and the Bravery Foundation supports them by covering their legal fees so that they can walk away from that. And it's really it's a brilliant way of, there's a lot of efforts going on to stop the war and frankly, dismantle the Putin government. But this is one of them that's really smart because it's dismantling from the inside key players who don't support what's going on there. And we all know from being in the workplace that when people start to leave, things break down, especially if they're not replaced, and especially if they leave under mysterious or controversial or contentious circumstances. So the Bravery Foundation is a very powerful way to support the work that Ilya is doing. And thank you everybody for paying for the show. I can see that you're doing it. I put a link in the chat, and why that link is important is if you click that, it takes you to a web page, and the web page is important because you don't have to come here and watch the show to support the Bravery Foundation. Your friends and family don't have to come here to watch the show and to support the Bravery Foundation. You can go to that page, click that link, go to that page, share the web address of that page with others, and they can go directly there and make a donation if they want to. And I know a lot of people, we all know people who have friends and family who are saying, I want to support the effort in Ukraine. I don't know what to do. This is a great way to do it. This is a great thing to do. So click that link, grab the web address, share it with others, share it in your social media, and let's help raise as much money as we can for Ilya and the Bravery Foundation.